We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order, the County Commissioners meeting this morning. If we all would, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brother Tim Andrews, please. Say the invocation for us.
Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for another time and opportunity to come together. Lord, just remind us that we're more alike than different. Lord, give us wisdom and grace and help us, God, in all things we do. In thy name, we love Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate everybody coming out today. Change up on the agenda here, down in presentation to the board, the ASTA funding statewide trail system, Mr. Lou Morrison. We will take that off. Other than that, everything stands as is. Do I hear a motion to accept?
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Public comment time. Open the floor for public comment. If anyone has anything to speak on, come on up. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. Move on down to presentation of the board. Mr. Andy Bleetham, Health, Septic permitting.
How's everybody doing this morning?
Good. You?
Hope you will.
It's Monday, right?
You go.
Thank you.
PowerPoint presentation is the full presentation. What I'm going to be going over with you today is slightly All right, well, good morning. As it says, my name's Andy Bleetham. I'm the Environmental Health Director at App Health. Good to be here this morning, present some information to you about septic permitting. Our health director, Jennifer Green, is for some reason here after coming back from vacation. She's a little hard of hearing, the sound of the surf still in her ears, so let me know and I'll translate for you. But I've got a short presentation based on a little longer one that kind of outlines the septic evaluation process. I'm going to update you with some new legislation with respect to private permitting options that are now open to the public, and obviously questions and comments that you may have as we go along. So I'll just jump on into the presentation if that's good with everybody. All right. All right, you can go ahead and click to there's 3. So why do we get a perk test? Well, people want to know what they can build, where they can build it, how big they can build. Ultimately, on their end, it comes down to what's that property worth. Not just to the person buying it, building it, the person selling it, the people that are putting in the system, building the house, the realtors, the attorneys, everybody involved in that process, and then ultimately the county with tax values of properties and bringing that money in to run all the wonderful programs like App Health. And ultimately, from our end, we're concerned, if you'll click it one more, Drew, we're obviously the most concerned with the protection of public health and our natural resources, the environment. Apologize, I try to talk loud enough, but all right, go ahead, Drew. All right, so when our staff conducts a site evaluation, these 6 criteria, which are each individually addressed by specific rule, have to be met. So our staff are not merely driving by, rolling down the window, and seeing what they think. They have to get out onto the property and work through each one of these 6 specific rules that has a number of subsections within it. All of these go together to tell us those 3 questions I put up front. What can I build? Where can I build? And ultimately, what's that property worth? Go ahead, Drew. Topography and landscape. People come to the mountains for that second home, that dream home. They either want water or rocks. They want to be on top of the mountain or down near creeks, streams, and ponds. These are not topographical landscapes that lend themselves to a good septic system. Conversely, nice, consistent slopes, not too steep, devoid of ravines and gullies and surface water. So you can see here, nice, gentle sites, easy to get onto, or what we look for. A lot of the good land is gone. And so the last set of pictures I showed you is what we find ourselves dealing with more and more as we work to permit lots from applicants. Okay, Drew. The soil is the most critical component of the septic system, and that takes probably the most time. So our staff look at probably 4 to 5 test pits and or auger borings on a typical site. Some of the more difficult sites, or if we've got larger systems, or it's a commercial or industrial wastewater system, or it's a large system, may take 10, 15, 20 evaluation pits. And every one of these test holes or pits, we have to look at it, the soil, for each one of those. The texture, the consistency, the structure, because each one of these impacts how water will move through that site, get treated, and get on out into our groundwater. So A, we've got more groundwater to use, but B, get it treated so that when it does hit our groundwater, it's not contaminating it with bacteria, viruses, chemicals, things of that nature. This takes quite a bit of time, especially on some challenging sites that we find ourselves on more and more. Go ahead, Drew. Look for indications of soil wetness. And I don't mean it just rained, 5 inches the last 2 days, and we've got a muddy pit, which is an indication of surface water coming in. We're looking at surface water. We can deal with that. We're looking at the subsurface water with a water table. This picture is a little hard to look at, but it's a lot of splotchy grays and reds. This is an indication of water table moving up and down throughout the course of the entire year, meaning that if we were to put a septic in this area, whenever it's wet, that system would be in groundwater, obviously contaminating that groundwater. So we have to look at the soil wetness that may be present. Go ahead, Drew. We also want to look at how deep the soil is before we get into restrictive horizons, before we get into rock, unsuitable parent material, and saprolite. And so we are trying to get a system in the A and B horizon and stay 12 inches above that C. The C horizon would indicate rock, as you can see in the picture to the right. Once effluent hits rock or an unsuitable or restrictive horizon, it's either going to continue to groundwater untreated, or it may come to the surface where we come into contact with it through personal contact. Our dogs, our pets get out into the failing system in the neighbor's property and bring it home to us. So we are trying to evaluate the site for all these. Go ahead, Drew. Finally, will it fit? So we've got all those criteria. We've got our soils. Now we've got to see what we can fit on the site. We've got typically, obviously, a house or some sort of structure. There might be other structures they want. They might want a swimming pool, a barn, an outbuilding. We've got to look at their water supply, make sure we stay away from that with the septic. What's going on the neighbor's property? We need to stay away from the neighbor's water supply because we don't want to contaminate that as well. So all these factors come into a typical site evaluation. And if all these factors are good, you're looking at about an hour to an hour and a half. If it's a challenging site, it can take a lot longer. And of course, adding in, getting the private sector involved and or our state specialists involved, making sure that everything's ready for us to come out to, and then go through that entire process. Go ahead, Drew. I'm going to walk you through some of the challenges with the site evaluation. So this is in Watauga County, and this is in about a 4-lot subdivision. You can see a lot of perk holes and test holes on there. Yes, sir. See that one okay? Okay. So we've got a lot of of perk holes dotted all over this property. We've already got a house that's been started. We got an application for this parcel right here. So Drew, if you'll hit. So the first thing we have to do is figure out where we cannot permit. There are certain places due to topography, due to right-of-way, such as the power line right-of-way, utility right-of-way, and we've got a road right-of-way. We can't go in there for a septic system because the owner would not control the system. So those areas are automatically excluded from us to look at. Next, we look at things such as, has the site been disturbed? Are there any changes? Well, they came in here to make everything look pretty, and we have a cut slope. They took a machine, they shaved off that bank, cleaned up all the underbrush and all the things that were growing and living down there to get a nice buildable site to appeal to somebody. We have to stay away from these areas that are mechanically disturbed. Next, we want to look for surface water. So we've got some drainage ways, both subsurface and surface stormwater that are moving down off the top of the mountain. We've got to take those into account and stay away from there. Next, we need to look at surface water and water supplies. So on this lot, we have an existing well, and depending on if it's a shared well or if this house is septic or this septic or in saprolite, we may be 50 feet, we may be 100 feet. And that's a radius around that well that we cannot violate. This spring, surface water is typically a 50-foot setback. In this case, the house next door had water rights to it. They weren't using it, but they had legal water rights if they wanted to go onto it. So we have to stay out of that area. So as you can see, this lot in here is dwindling pretty quick for what we have left for septic. We stay out of standing water and creek setbacks at the bottom. Go ahead, Drew. Okay. Over here, we looked at these pits, and it was shallow to rock. Keeping away from our setbacks and the soil depth and the texture and the consistency, we didn't have deep soils to use one of our kind of everyday conventional gravity systems. Go ahead, Drew. Over here, we hit something that we don't see around these parts, and that's impermeable clay. Typically, the Piedmont area is where we run into this. You add water to that clay, it swells up. The water's not going to move. It's going to come back up, and we have a public health issue. Don't see it, but we did here, so we've lost that area to work with. Pits up above, again, shallow to rock, except for an engineered type system. Go ahead. So we've got this area right here to look at these pits, and that's where the builder wanted to put the house. Best spot on the lot. So after evaluating all these components, we're kind of left with what do we do now? When we get to this part, we don't just look at the applicant and say, well, sorry, it didn't work, reapply, we'll start over. We work with them for all the different options that may be. This area, we had a small area for a standard gravity system that would work just fine. We worked with the builder to move the house, and that lot received a permit. But this evaluation process on this type of lot took multiple visits over multiple days, and I believe we worked with our state specialist too to try to make sure that we didn't get into areas we didn't, to get a system that fails that both impacts the owner and also public health. So go ahead, Drew. I have to click a couple times. Yeah, I haven't figured that glitch out yet. One more. There we go. So that's a kind of a quick look at what our staff do when they go to every single site. Now, permitting-wise, there's obviously going to be paperwork that goes along with the field process, and we have a 3-tiered permitting process. Drew. The first is the improvement permit. This tells you, does the lot perk? Does it pass the site evaluation? And what it perks for. Is it a 3-bedroom house using an engineered system? Is it a 5-bedroom house using gravity? It lays out the parameters of that property of where the septic and the repair, if that's needed, must go, where the house, water supplies, what's going on the adjacent properties. This is primarily used when people want to sell property, whether it be a developer or an individual owner. Hey, I want to sell some land. I can get a prospective buyer and say, look, it's already approved for this many bedrooms, or if it's commercial, this type of use, as long as you abide by the conditions on the permit. They're typically good for 5 years. Now, you can take it a step further and put things like the septic, the proposed structure, water supplies, and surface water on a survey plat, and then that improvement permit's good forever. So you can spend a few more $100s and have a site evaluation with an improvement permit that does not expire, as long as nothing changes either on the site, you don't come in and grade it out or log it down to bedrock, or somebody buys it and wants to do something totally different. In those cases, we would have to go back to it. Go ahead, Drew. The authorization to construct, this is when you want to build. This is when the person is like, hey, I've got the property. I know where my house is going. We work out those final details, driveway, water supply, the house, the decks, making sure that that system that we designed and permitted is going to go in as planned. And it is specific to that site. And if any changes get made due to, we find a huge boulder in the middle of the septic area, which can happen, or the driveway gets graded in through the middle of it, then we go back, work with the applicant, try to make changes and re-permit it for its use. We in App District, our fee for the construction authorization is based on the type of system. The simpler the system, the less you pay. If we get into things that require engineers and advanced technology such as pre-treatment and drip, we charge a little bit more because our staff are going to spend considerable more time going through that process. So we try to be fair. We want to cover our own operating costs because, as you know, we're always looking for more money to hire more staff and keep it going. So we try to charge commensurate to what work we're actually doing. Go ahead, Drew. Finally is the operation permit. When the system's in the ground, the structures are complete. We're mainly worried about the footprint, decks, outbuildings. When everything is there and we know that the system has not been compromised, it's been installed the right area, then we sign off the operation permit, and then they can go to the building department and apply to get their CO and their permanent power from the county. Those are the 3 types of permits that we issue just for one site evaluation through that entire process. Go ahead. So the application is really not as hard as doing your taxes, although I've heard maybe it is. I should probably buy some property here and try for myself. But on the application, we ask for the basic information. And we ask for things also, what's going on next door? Do you have right-of-ways? You know, there are fuel tanks on your neighbor's property. Where's their well? Because we cannot go onto a property without legal permission. When the applicant submits our packet, we have written permission to be on that property. But we can't go over to the neighbors other than to knock on the door, present ourselves. If they're home, say, hey, health department, where's your well? Or, you know, your neighbor wants to drill a well. Do you have a fuel oil tank? If we don't get that permission, we can't go across the boundaries. And if you don't tell us it's there, we don't know, which could lead to some permitting problems down the road, if you'll go. Site preparation is the biggest thing that slows us down when it comes to our staff going out. And we've talked a little bit about getting some technicians to improve workflow, to go to sites to make sure they're ready for us before the specialist hits the ground, meets the machine, and then we find out there's an issue. We're going to be working on some projects to add a lot more detailed information, maybe even some videos on our website to kind of show applicants that don't do this every day what's involved in site prep. When you take that diagram, what does that look like in the field? What are we asking you to do to get us through this evaluation process to get you your permit as quickly as possible? And this is a very important piece that we're going to concentrate on. So we asked for things to be marked, and on this particular site, that's one of our grade rods. It's about 5 feet. Those are the 4 perk holes that our paper says please get about 30 to 40 feet apart, because we've got to look at a large area. We don't permit a system other than maybe a pit privy that will go in an area that small. That stake says driveway, and the house wasn't even marked for us. So I went up and did that evaluation years ago. That was a wasted trip. It was not ready. And we had, so, Drew, when we go out, we have to flag off the drain field. Just because we have good soil doesn't mean the system is going to fit, or how much can I get in. The difference between a 2 and a 3 or a 4 bedroom is a big deal on the what's that land worth. So when we get a briar patch or a tree thicket like that, we can't evaluate it. These are things we ask for. Is the area cleared? Can we access it? I could not access that site to work on it. That put them back. Drew? Property lines are essential. If we permit on the wrong property, whether it's our fault or not, it's going to cause time and money and legal issues for everybody involved. And it always comes back to us whether we're at fault or not. So we do ask that these be accurately marked, in some cases by a surveyor. We have some discretion. If it's a 100-acre parcel, and we can look on some phone apps we have, and we're in the middle of it, we're not going to worry about it. But if I'm near a property line, then we may have to get a surveyor. So when I initially went out, these test pits were dug. There's 4 here and 1 over here near that tree shadow. But the property line was not marked. So I told the applicant, I'm sorry, I don't know I'm on the right property. Get it marked, I'll come back. These wooden stakes were set by a surveyor. It splits those pits. Of these 5 pits, only 1 was on the property I was supposed to evaluate. If I had taken his word that I know my property, I would have issued a permit on the neighbor's lot, and that could have led, if the house was under construction and the system was in the ground on the neighbor's property, that's a legal nightmare we have dealt with before. And it's not good for anybody involved. So property lines are essential. This is a house in Ashe County, and we looked at it about five or so years ago. The owner marked the property lines. We had rebar. It looked like a surveyor had been out there. We issued a septic permit. They put it in the ground down here in this area. The house was about 2/3 complete when the neighbor up here called us and said, you guys may have issued a permit on my property, and I know the guy's house is on my property. The gentleman here evidently surveyed himself, his property, set stakes that match so that when we checked these property lines, we saw nothing to say it didn't look anything other but good. Had good, clean rebar, fresh ribbon. That's what we look for with the surveyor. Well, his house was over that line. The house sold just this year for $800,000. It's a valuable piece of property with a great view in Ashe County. That house was not the original house because the original house came down. 2/3 complete. The owner up here did not agree to sell any land or allow him to keep it, and that house came down. So site preparation. Now that wasn't on us, but if it had been, we would have been part of a multi-$100,000 project. And literally the track hose came in, tore it down, and they started over. Okay, Drew. This is something I can speak to personally. This is a site in Boone where I had a plat. Now there's a lot of backstory. This started back in '99, I believe, with a site evaluation from our department where we did not get all the information from the applicant. They didn't tell us about a spring that their neighbor was using as a water supply, and our staff didn't see it. Springs can be covered up, and you don't know it's there. Long story short, we had a survey plat, which a lot of people do. The irons were not located. The owner, one of those, hey, this is where I am. We were working with them to get a well because ultimately we permitted a system too close to their spring, and we had to get them a new water supply. So got in a hurry. Instead of getting the surveyor to mark that line due to getting funding from the state to help make this situation right for the public. Go ahead, Drew. We drilled the well, got a call from the neighbor. Hey, you drilled a well on my property. So this is the survey plat. This is the parcel we wanted to drill on, and we got a well about 2.41 inches on the wrong side of that line. So it happens on both ends. This one's on me, and I own it. And it's my example going forth with my staff that get property lines marked. Don't assume anything. So I think that's kind of an abbreviated version of what I've given you on what goes into a site evaluation process. Any questions on that part?
Just a couple that, on the site preparation, when you go there and it's not ready, the bushes are grown up, that's one charge. Do you make another charge to go back when it is ready? And if you go back the second time, has that person moved from the top of the list to the bottom of the list, and then he starts all over again because he wasn't ready? The property wasn't ready when he told you that it was ready.
Okay, so we do have a mechanism to charge for a wasted visit. We typically reserve those for our frequent flyers, developers, builders, people that know our process and obviously didn't do it. So if we're dealing with somebody that they've never applied for a septic system and it's kind of hard to understand, our staff have some leeway. I don't feel it's always justified to penalize. If we have to charge it, then yes, we will require that fee to come in before we'll go back out. If we go back out a second time and it's still not done, then we leave and we'll charge them another fee until we get out there and what we need done is accomplished. Now, typically, we don't put them to the back of the line. So if I go out and the property line's not marked, okay, you need to get it marked, call me back, I'll work you in as quick as I can. If it's, especially here again, if it's somebody that doesn't do this for a living, this is my first perk test, I'm lost, I'm going to hold some hands quite a bit. And that's what we want our staff to do. Because we are ultimately here to serve the public in that we want to get them, get the permit they want, the house that they enjoy, but a septic system that's going to last and not be a headache for them moving forward or a public health threat. Does that explain?
Yep.
A lot of lots where the obstructions are in your way and you can't do your job, or is that just one now and then? Do you see it?
We make a lot of wasted site visits.
Really?
Because the property is not prepped. The biggest one is property lines, where there's some ribbon in a tree. I had a gentleman in Ashe County, he waited 3.5 months. I stopped by on the way home, tried to get the job done. I had no idea where the property lines were. If they had been marked, I probably could have got him knocked out. But I had to call him and go back through trying to find them. When we meet a machine to dig pits, which we do that more often than not now, it makes the most sense. We can get the machine to clear our area. If it's thick underbrush, rhododendron, we can knock that out with the machine. Sometimes we need additional, but here again, we try to be as efficient on that site with the applicant, with their contractor, with the machinery to get it all knocked out in hopefully one visit.
Any other questions?
Got one other update, well, a couple other things. If you want, for the private permitting option, we have new law, and that's one of the handouts that's designed to speed things up. So the Session Law 2018-114 was a hybrid permitting between the health department and private soil scientists. This is separate from the engineered permit or an LSS COVID permit where we had nothing to do with the permitting, we just kept the public record. The Session Law 2018 was a little vague, and the way it was written, it still required us to go out because we were responsible for the design and the liability that comes with it. So the private option that was designed to speed things up actually kind of slowed things down a little bit. The legislature has readdressed that, and we have some new session law that was signed by the governor at the end of June. I'm sharing with you the guidance that we got a couple weeks ago from the state, but it cleans up the private option with a licensed soil scientist to where if the licensed soil scientist working with an authorized on-site wastewater evaluator, which most of them are, they have that certification, they can send everything to us And we have 10 business days to review it in the office, generate the permit, kick it out the door. So that aspect of it's going to be good. These private options can hopefully take us out of having to go to the field because it implicitly takes the liability off the local department. It also allows for some other mechanisms where it's still part us and them, and that could still lead to more time on our end. But I think most of the private LSSs have their system down to where they're going to do the improvement permit and the construction authorization, submit it to us, we make sure everything's on they've checked all the right boxes, and then we issue a permit within 10 business days. That will speed up the permitting. Now, our staff still have to go catch the final inspection, and if we find an issue, we report it to the LSS or the AWOE, AOWE, and then they can make the corrections as needed, and then we'll verify those. But the new session law should speed things up on us because now we don't have to go to that site for a walkover. Now, it's going to free us up another hour or more on a day where we don't have to go out to them. I can do the paperwork in the office. And 10 business days is not unreasonable at all. So,
Is there a minimum size to a lot to have a septic tank, to have a well or a spring? Is there a minimum?
not by our rules. I believe Ashe County has a minimum acre. Some counties require a minimum size for a home site and everything. We've got a lot in Blowing Rock. It's about 0.15 acres with it worked out, and they were on community water. But as long as we can meet our setbacks and get the system in, no, there's no minimum.
What else?
Just one quick question. Are there very many people currently using the private soil scientist services?
We're seeing more and more. And I think when this language is cleaned up, we'll get even more because, why do I want to go to the private when the health department's got to go out there anyway? Why do I want to pay two entities, a private business and the health department? So this will speed up getting those out the door. And that'll speed us up because now we don't have to send our staff for the pre-installation visits.
In that instance, is there a different fee for your department whenever you issue a permit through method?
Currently, for the session law from an LSS, we charge full fee. The legislation sets the fees. This is brand new, so obviously we need to discuss. Do we need to amend that? Because obviously we don't want to charge people for work we're not doing. We've not had time to get to that point. We've got the guidance a couple weeks ago. We've got to figure it out. We've got new forms we've got to incorporate, make sure we're doing it right. But that is on the list of things. If we're not going to go out for anything but the final inspection, then certainly I think we should reduce the fee for that permit, knowing that we're not going to put as much time and effort into it on our end. It's only fair. You don't charge people for work you don't do.
Thanks.
Sir.
Anybody else?
Is Jennifer going to speak? There you go.
Tommy, you got me out of this mess.
I just wanted to add, I spoke to you all a little bit about some legislative proposals to change the recruitment standards. We did push that through the DHHS. It went into House Bill 911, the Regulatory Reform Act of 2022, but it did not pass in the short session. So we're going to be working through, and I wanted to mention it to you because I know that our association, the Health Directors Association, has mentioned it to the County Commissioners Association. So, and I do think there's good support. Maybe it was just the short session being very short this time, and that's the reason. So that language has already been proposed, which would amend the requirements for environmental health specialists. When we hire them, they could have a public health degree, and right now they have to have 30 semester hours of a specific type of science. This would broaden the science requirements or allow them to have a public health degree, which would give us a bigger pool of applicants when we're trying to recruit. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we are still trying to fill an environmental health technician for Alleghany County. If you know of anyone who might be interested, the posting is on our website. We have filled the other positions in Watauga and in Ash, so we're hopeful to be able to fill it here soon. We have filled all of our vacant positions for environmental health specialists, and we spoke to the Board of Health at our last meeting. They gave us support to go ahead and move forward to add more positions because we know the backlog is still a concern. It's a concern of ours too, so I don't want folks to think that we've forgotten that. And then lastly, I guess I wanted to mention, we do have an environmental health stakeholder group that's meeting every month. The next meeting is July 26th, and it's going to be virtual. So anyone who might be interested in that, they're welcome to reach out to us, to Andy or myself, and we're happy to get them involved. We have builders, we have folks who are in the industry who have an opinion about the process, who are helping give some perspective, which we welcome. And so our goal is to really have this group sort of help us as we're moving forward and making improvements. We have a lot more to come. I think I mentioned to you, we have a American Rescue Plan funded project with another 10-county region. We have selected a contractor for that, and that work has begun as well. So we have a lot moving forward. I know it's not happening fast enough. There is still a backlog. One thing I wanted to point out is that the private option is a very good option. It also costs a lot more. And so that's important for folks to understand as well. So, yeah, thank you for giving us an opportunity to come and talk today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate that report. Next is Ms. April Ham.
Morning.
Morning.
This fiscal year, we're actually going to start a new report, an HR report, and the main purpose of this is to recognize employees that are going to be retiring from the county. And we have one we want to recognize this morning, Miss Debbie Carrico. She started with the county November 1st, 1994. She is the Assistant Register of Deeds, and she will be officially retiring August the 1st from the county. So we wanted to recognize her, tell her thank you for all those years of service, just shy of 28 years of service with the county. And I want to invite her and Miranda both up here if you'd like to say anything, Miranda. This is your time to shine here, David.
I don't have a speech. I just want to thank you, Alleghany County, for allowing me to work for you for 28 years. Privilege, and I've enjoyed it.
Certainly appreciate your service for 28 years. That's a long time, and you've done a great job.
I'll just add to what April said. She's dedicated her whole career to Alleghany County, and I know Jackie and I are going to very much miss her, but along with a lot of the public will miss her as well. She's very well known in the community and thought of very highly, and her shoes are definitely going to be hard to fill. But we appreciate everything you've done, and we look forward to seeing what you and Mark get to venture out and do afterwards. So thank you.
Thank you.
Long time to be in.
Yes, it is. Especially not have no gray hair.
Oh. Mine's gone really gray the past couple of years. Next, I have the finance report, and I passed it out earlier for all the commissioners. And I have done this report as of the end of last fiscal year. So all your numbers are reflected of last fiscal year, and I'll go over some adjustments that we're going to have. Year-to-date revenue, $18,241,937 for the fiscal year. Year-to-date expenditures so far, and there will be a few more expenditures that are going in that number. There'll actually be some more revenues that'll be going in that number too. But expenditures as of right now, $16,366,888. And then the approved budget for last fiscal year was $17,611,637. Bank balance as of the last day of the fiscal year for '22 was $13,417,763.67, as compared to a year ago at the end of the fiscal year, $7,158,662.29, and then 2 year ago comparison, $3,676,335.76. Take into account our year-to-date revenue and expenditures, our net financials for the year, $1,875,049. Our audited fund balance for fiscal year '21, $5,569,831. And we do have some end-of-the-year revenue adjustments, and I went ahead and put that number in there for you. This represents a couple of larger reimbursements for social services, and May's sales tax is also in that number. We do have that in the bank as of this morning. So we will have a revenue adjustment of $492,519 as of right now. And just giving you a look at the new unaudited fund balance, and we'll put that word in there, $7,937,399. Now, that will change in the next 30 days, 45 days. The way governmental accounting works, we have a period, and if the revenue is actually designated for May or June, that revenue goes back to last fiscal year. Same thing with the expenditures. So you're going to see that number change just a little bit. Can I answer any questions about the financial report this morning?
Very good,
Looks good.
very good.
Comparison numbers there.
Right. Certainly is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David Spicer, Facilities Update, Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. I certainly, as we've come together today to look at this, R&D is still working on the courthouse and the 90 South Main projects, so we're in process on that. We're still having regular meetings and keeping those things at breast, so we are looking at those very carefully and keeping up with those things, and certainly as we have updates on any of those things, we will certainly fill you all in and make sure that you're aware of those things. The administration building here, dispatch is still ongoing. We have the site for the tower completed out here. The tower's not here yet. We're still waiting on the tower, waiting on consoles and some of those things to come in, and but that is progressing pretty good. So the generator is getting a little bit closer. We have the control wires has been put in, and those things is already in place. So as they get the other stuff that comes in, they will put it in as it comes in. The flooring out here that we've been talking about for some time now, that is supposed to begin work on that this week. So that should be completed this week. That's the last that I heard from the contractor as of Thursday of last week. Transfer facility, we have been working on getting the temporary tip and floor fixed. We have not yet got a contractor for that. We've kind of been working on that a little bit and may have to rework our RFP in order to get that put back out, but we'll see how that works in the next little bit, and we'll keep you updated on that. We did have two loads of cardboard, 5.49 tons, one load of commingle, which was 4.94 tons. We have hauled 2 loads of scrap metal. The one load was 4.21 tons, and the second one, after we got over there, or after Mark got over there with the load, they had been hit by lightning and could not make us out a ticket on that day. So as soon as we've got a couple or 3 more loads left to haul, as soon as we haul the next load, they'll put it all together, and everything will be kosher on that. The fairgrounds, the Fiddlers Convention, it went off really well. We had some repair work to do out there on that beforehand, and we'll have a little bit to do afterwards that we already know about. So we're keeping up with that and keeping those things done. So the fairgrounds and all is pretty well underhand. So we've got that taken care of. The animal shelter. The animal shelter, as of right now, is still closed. So we've had some setbacks on that with some vacations and some things. So that hopefully this week will be reopened. So we have had to board one dog. It's boarded at Glade Creek Animal Hospital. We had no choice working with law enforcement on that one to get that dog taken care of. Otherwise, the owners of the animals that to be surrendered or done something with, the owners have been very gracious in helping us and being understanding about the animal shelter being closed, so we haven't had any problems with that. So I look for, after the animal shelter opens back up, I look for an influx and increase of animals being surrendered to the county. So that's probably coming up, and that's fine. I appreciate the public understanding and helping us with that, because we have nowhere else to go. So thank you, folks, for helping us with that. We did have 2 well checks, and one of them, well, 2 that were small animals and 1 that were horses. We had 1 dog that was picked up. I had 2 that were 2 bites. Both of them had to be quarantined. However, the paperwork was correct. The owner had the paperwork. The owner had a place to separately quarantine those animals, so that is allowed. So they were able to quarantine those at home. We had 2 at large, which we found no dogs. 2 dog-on-dog attacks. 1 dog was taken care of, and a report was made. The other one, the dog did die. It did die after being taken to the vet's office. So those 2 dogs, those were, owners took care of those. We did have 3 traps set with no yield. So we've had 17 calls and a total of 41 hours this time through. So hopefully, I'm looking for that to increase next period because of the shelter being closed. Did have, and I would like to ask the public if they would to follow proper channels in reporting the animal welfare checks or dogs running at large. We did have a couple that showed up at the home of one of our officers. That didn't sit well with them, and I don't agree with that as well. It should have went through proper channels. So I just wanted to remind the public that we have someone there at the transfer facility during the day to take your calls, and after hours we have people who are at the dispatch center. Those dispatchers take our calls and then relay them to us. So there is a proper way to do that, and the Animal Control Department respectfully asks that you respect us in our time and handle things that are appropriate and go through the appropriate channels. So at this time, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Questions? Appreciate the hard work there, David.
Thank you.
Thanks for that good report. Miranda Root, job descriptions.
Morning. So given April's news, Debbie is retiring, so that opened our office back up to a position. And in looking through the job descriptions for the office and so forth, it came to be that there was not a deputy position, within the Register of Deeds office. So I'm asking for that position to be added back into the salary grades. And in addition to that, I went ahead and reworked the assistant's positions as well. So now that there'll be an assistant 1 and an assistant 2 to allow growth within the office. You have copies within your packet, and I'm just asking for those approvals to be added back to the salary grades.
The request here, what's the feeling of the board?
Do those.
Second. Motion and second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor? 5-0.
Thank you.
Any road? And surplus property.
Morning.
Morning.
So, as you are all aware, we've had a little campground out at the fairgrounds for quite some time now. And that program is coming to an end. Dana has announced that new applicants will no longer be taken at the end of August. And it's a good thing. And a lot of our campers now aren't being used, or some of them aren't being used. Dana approached me sometime early last week asking about the possibility and trying to gauge some interest and whether the county would be willing to sell those campers to Haywood County, who has also experienced a disaster event in the past, and they're in the recovery process. So at any rate, I'm here to ask you guys to declare a couple of those campers as surplus property. Now, we've also had some discussion about selling those to Haywood County. It is my opinion that considering everything that OSBM has done for us, and there is a legitimate need someplace else for these people to have a house, that we transfer those to Haywood County at no cost. That's the request I've got in front of you today.
Motion to approve as recommended.
It came to us with no monies involved from the state.
That's right. OSBM bought them to start with,
Right.
and they've put over $1 million into projects for us. I think it's very
It's the least
reasonable.
we can do.
I think so too.
John made the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Michelle second. All in favor? 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the second item I have here is the hazard mitigation plan, and I don't know how familiar you folks are with that plan. It's something that comes around every 5 years. It's stipulated to us by the state and by FEMA. And what hazard mitigation is, it's a bit different from like our emergency operations plans. Hazard mitigation is the identification of things that could happen, and how can we do things to try to plan for the future to make them better, or to make them, I'll use the word less impactful, because bad things are going to happen. What can we do to mitigate that risk, to make it less impactful? So this was our 5-year cycle. The plan is very extensive. I think you guys got a link emailed to you. It's over 600 pages. It is a whole lot of trees to make this thing. But it identifies things that could happen here, both based on a historical perspective and what we could see for the future. What are our vulnerabilities? What are our capabilities to handle those things? And then ultimately, what sorts of things can we be doing to try to make disasters less impactful? The plan is written by an outside agency. The state pays for it. It's a regional plan that's Ashe, Alleghany, Wilkes, and Watauga. And like I say, they handle it. They do a lot of the plan writing in that with our input, of course. We meet 2 or 3 times. Which normally is in person, not so much now. But at any rate, that plan has been seen. It has been approved by the state as a draft. It has been approved by FEMA as a draft. The only thing that is remaining is the approval of the boards of both this county and the town of Sparta. I know it's a big document, but you guys, I don't expect you to read 636 pages of it. I didn't either. But if I can answer any questions for you, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Questions?
Motion to approve.
The motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any further questions? Not all in favor? 5-0.
The only other thing I want to add is that, just for your awareness, I will be at the next town council meeting with the same thing. So you guys know I'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Commissioner John Irwin, meeting reviews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second week of the month is my busy week with the various committees that I sit on, the county manager asked that I start briefing so that the commissioners would be more aware of what concerns are coming about. On the Council on Aging, there's a number of things that were brought out that were eye-opening, to be quite frank with you. Council on Aging looked at pre-pandemic and after the pandemic. One of the things that we saw, just to give you an example of where we are, in 2018-2019, that is a fiscal year that ends on June the 30th, a total of number of meals that were given by the Council on Aging was 12,842. Now, this is comprised of congregate meals, meaning that if you meet the criteria, you can go to the Council on Aging building and you can sit down and have a hot meal at noon. In 2022, 19,424. Congregate meals, meaning that during the year, people sitting down and having that meal at the Council on Aging, was 4,580. Home-delivered meals, 14,844. As they made their budget, they had to go on past history, and they found that on the congregate meals, they served more than 800 above what they had planned for. For the home-delivered meals, $9,167 worth. Right now, there are 12 elderly that have requested and met the financial requirements for home-delivered meals, but they cannot receive these meals. In an emergency situation, they will be given emergency meals, which are basically required no refrigeration, things of this nature. Reason why they cannot meet this requirement is equipment. Whenever a meal is delivered, it must be delivered at 140 degrees. They do not have sufficient equipment. They also have equipment that is in need of repair. Now, right now, the Council on Aging is doing 100 meals a day for the elderly. 30 in building, 70 delivered. These meals are delivered by volunteers. As I said, there are 12 that are awaiting meals to go on the list that they simply cannot provide. Also, there is a shortage of CNAs, and there is a number of elderly that are awaiting. They qualify, but they're waiting for home visits where CNAs will come in and check on them and make sure that everything's going well. Part of the problems that we see with this 6,582 additional meals, the elderly, we have a number of elderly, and you can see this whenever you go to get fuel. If you see $20 on that fuel, more than likely one of two things has happened. Somebody's filling their tank for their lawnmower, or you have a elderly or someone that is poor, that's all they can afford for fuel. That is how they get to town. So it is a challenge. Last year, as of 30 June, the Council on Aging was short in their budget approximately a little over $10,000. Fortunately, the they received a grant for $10,000 at the last minute, which basically broke them even. There is a little more money that is being appropriated in the state of North Carolina that will help, but this is going to become a continuing and a larger problem, especially with the inflation that we're seeing right now. Unfortunately, as the elderly, as most of us on this board are aware, the majority of us we're drawing Social Security. You will get a cost of living benefit, but it's going to be later. You've got to live in between. Whenever you're on fixed income, that's just the way it is. And it is impacting this community. There's another indicator of where we are. At the food closet, they have had as many as 30 families show up for food assistance a day. A year ago, I would say the norm, and I'm getting this information from close at hand, not quite pillow talk, because my wife works at the food closet, 15 to 20 would have been a normal. Now, it's not uncommon to have over 25 to 30. So this county is being impacted heavily with the inflation. And, Mr. Chair, that is my report on the Council on Aging. And if no one has any questions, I will go into the Workforce Consortium.
Any questions on the Council on Aging?
On the Workforce Consortium, the big thing that came out of the Workforce Consortium is the other 6 counties, it's comprised of 7 counties, they're having the same problems that we are. As a matter of fact, we had to modify the bylaws for one of the boards because the terminology in the bylaws stated that you had to have a quorum of appointed positions. Every county, including us, we have 2 positions, we have none, but at least all the other counties had at least 1 position that was filled, and there was more than 1 county that had both positions that were not filled. So we had to modify the bylaws to have filled positions, and that was the big one. It is a continuing problem. I don't foresee it getting any better. Especially with Alleghany County, we're so small, and we have so few businesses that just about everyone's been appointed to this board at one time or have just not interested in getting it. If there's no questions, I'll continue on to the Virginia-Carolina Water Authority. Virginia-Carolina Water Authority has failed to have a quorum for at least the last year. Again, we had no quorum, so we had no meeting. So that one's short and sweet. If no one has any questions, I'll continue with the Alleghany County Group Home.
Go ahead.
On the Alleghany County Group Home, the biggest problem that they have, well, they had one golden moment, and that is the van that my fellow commissioners approved, the lift van that went from Alleghany in Motion over there. They have received the van. They are happy. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to use it because the young man that requires it, his family took him to the beach last week. However, he is back this week, and Alleghany in Motion will give them instructions on the proper use and the safety features of the van. They are very happy and thank the Board of Commissioners for that. One of the things that they are running into, just to be aware, under NC Tracks, April's not here. One of the problems that they are running into, oh, excuse me, I overlooked you. Do we deal with NC Tracks?
Our EMS.
Okay. They do have a problem with them, NC Tracks. Somehow their address changed in the system. Alleghany County Group Homes never moved, but somebody made a change in the system, or it suddenly appeared, so they haven't been paid in a number of months. And they're trying to get that worked out. And of course, Via is involved with this because Value certifies the services and then sends it to NC Tracks or somewhere in a convoluted roundabout way. One of the things that the Alleghany County Group Home is concerned about, and frankly I am too, they cannot work these developmentally challenged people if it gets above 82 degrees. They have had to stop work for a number of weeks. Around midday, as soon as that temperature gets to 82 degrees, that's it. They've got to send them home. Whenever you have some developmentally challenged individuals, they're aware that they're different from normal people. But one thing that they do take pride in is they're able to earn a paycheck. They're just like normal people. They work, they can get a paycheck. Whenever we send them home, it affects two things. One, their emotional stability. And two, Alleghany County Group Home is doing this under contract. If they do not produce a product, they don't get the money. So it is a double whammy. I know under the ARPA request last year, they requested funds for a air conditioning system so that they could take care of this, eliminate this problem. Hopefully, we might be able to help them out this year, but that is two areas that, frankly, they are in some need. Other than that, unless someone has some questions, I'm done.
Any questions? Thank you, John, for that report.
Thank you.
Next, April Ham. You popular lady today.
Good morning again.
Morning.
You should have a copy of a updated pay grade plan and classification plan. I do have highlighted on the plan the things that are being added. One is the EMT basic with a contract for our EMS services that gives a pathway to become a paramedic with the county's assistance and help, but they do have to sign a contract. Linda's currently working on that contract with the county manager's office. The other highlighted sections that you'll see is the Register of Deeds, job descriptions and the titles, the positions for those that Miranda had for you earlier. The rest of the plan was just cleaned up a little bit. We had things that had been consolidated in the past, things that were no longer prevalent in any of our offices or departments, so it's cleaned up a little bit, and we're adding the 4 that you see.
You need a motion on this?
I think we do need a motion on this
To
one, yes.
approve.
Got a motion here, a second?
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Not all in favor? 5-0.
All those do go into effect July 26th. Okay. Next, you should have copies of banking paperwork, certification of, it's actually the certification of our natural authorized person, not a beneficial owner. We're exempt from that. Who is going to be on our signature card, which is Michael Carter, the county manager, myself, Bill Osborne, as the chair of the board, Drew Todd, Robin Hamilton, and Doug Smith.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Motion here, second. Any further discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Next is it the ARPA plan or the line item transfers? Okay. There's actually a couple more policies that we need to get in effect with the American Rescue Plan. This is one. It's the Civil Rights Act policy. This was a template that was provided to me by the School of Government, number one. I went through and changed things that were pertinent to Alleghany County, and then Heather, as our county attorney, has reviewed it and added any necessary things that needs to be on it.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second. Second, any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
And then we have a few more end of the fiscal year line item transfers. Fuel continues to be a problem. You're seeing them now because we got the last WEX bill with those charges on it, so that's one reason you're seeing this. We have money coming from emergency overtime and EMS to auto expense to cover fuel. We have money coming from salaries in Public Works because they have been down in position for a while. That is now filled in this fiscal year, but he was down several months, one position, to cover auto maintenance and supplies and materials. And then the transfer facility, we have money coming from the telephone line and utilities to cover scrap tire expense, the hauling of that, and then from permit fees and transfer facility improvements to cover fuel for the facility.
Motion?
So moved.
Motion second, any discussion? Not all in favor? 5-0.
I think the last document, we did get the first payment of the opioid settlement. It's in the amount of $36,889. That is like a lot of the other funds that we have received in the past year. It goes in a separate fund, so that fund is going to be 58. We will be getting a second portion of that in this fiscal year, and I believe it's around $90,000. From there on out, it will be a one-year payment in the summer of each year, and it goes through 2038. It's a long period of time. But this is the first payment that we have received, that you have in front of you.
Those funds can only be used for,
Very specific purposes, yes. They are restricted,
That's good.
and no decisions have been made.
Hear a motion? Motion and second, any further discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is, I'll take this part, Commissioner appointment reviews. Sometime now, the majority of the Alleghany County Board of Commissioners have felt that Commissioner John Irwin has demonstrated violations to the adopted code of ethics that each board member must adhere to. Today, we take the first step in addressing these violations and determining how we move forward as the governing body of Alleghany County. The following sentence is a direct excerpt from the adopted code and begins the introduction of such while setting the tone for the adopted code. Quote, "The Code of Ethics is to establish guidelines for ethical standards of conduct for the Alleghany County Board of Commissioners and to help determine what conduct is appropriate in particular cases," unquote. We, the majority of Alleghany County Board of Commissioners, believe that Commissioner John Irwin has demonstrated violations of this Code of Ethics, specifically under Section 2, identified with the following: behaving constantly and with respect toward everyone with whom they interact, treating other board members and the public with respect and honoring the options of others, even when the board members disagree with those options. As a result of these violations, the Alleghany County Board of Commissioners hereby takes the following steps to address these violations by removing Commissioner John Irwin from his current committees, appointments including Alleghany Group Homes, the Council on Aging, Court Security and Renovation Committee, High Country Workforce Development Board, Virginia Carolina Water Authority Board, Nominating Committee, Ordinance Committee, and a Configuration Change Control Board. As we continue to move forward, any violations of the Code of Ethics by any elected official will be addressed swiftly and ethically to assist in preventing recurring or repeated violations. It is unfortunate that we have arrived at this point where we, the Alleghany County Board of Commissioners, must begin taking the necessary steps to ensure the adopted Code of Ethics remains in place and adhered to by all elected commissioners moving forward. So, with that being said, I would ask for a motion.
Make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I will second the motion.
Got a motion and a second to remove Commissioner John Irwin from these stated committees that he currently sits on. Any questions? Not all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? 4-0. Okay. I want to appoint back to these boards that he was currently sitting on, so there's no lapse in time. The Alleghany Group Homes. I'll take that one. Country Workforce. Who would want that? Water Authority. I'll take that one. Council on Aging.
I'll take that.
Bobby. Court Security and Renovations. Mark, can you fit your schedule? Ordinance Committee.
I'll take
Michelle. Nominating Committee. Configuration and Control Committee. Bobby, all right. That fulfills the slate of commissioners to handle those committees. Okay. Finishes that portion of the business. Earthquake tipping fees, Assistant Manager.
This was
Is the cleanup that, as Daniel stated, that's about done, so.
They are
No.
completely finished, but the other option, if actually take, would it be?
Need to go ahead and let this.
You don't have a microphone.
We need to end this. With that, I'll hear a motion to end the tipping.
So moved.
Motion, second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Morning.
Morning.
There was a lot of information in my stuff this month. Our regular monthly reports and then our fiscal year settlement, the insolvents, and then the order to collect was all in there, as well as 2 motor vehicle appeals. And it looks like that's all under the consent agenda, so if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Anybody have any questions? If not, entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
And just wanted to let the board know and let the public know, the license plate office will be closed the week of August the 8th to the 12th under our contract. We're allowed to close them 5 consecutive days for vacation, so that will be August the 8th to the 12th, and that will run in the newspaper for 3 weeks, and we're letting people know as they
Very
come through.
much.
So, thank you.
Thank you. County manager's comments. Ms. Drew?
I would just encourage the board to look at the building inspections report and also thank Debbie for her dedicated service. We will miss her.
Yes, we will. We will. Thank you. Commissioner comments. Start with Mark. Bobby?
I'd just like to say what a great weekend the Fiddlers Convention was. Town was full of people. There was also a memorial service or a memorial service celebration at the Veterans Park over the weekend. I think that was very well attended. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. John?
The only thing that I will say prior to consultation with an attorney is that I would like a copy of the statement read by the chair. Also let the public know that completely blindsided, and I will have more to say after consultation with an attorney.
Thank you. Michelle?
I would like to say that I would like to give some kudos to Lisa Bottomley, our chamber director. She does a lot of great things for this community. She, along with Susan Miles and Casey McGill, did a lot during the 4th of July parade. Also, Lisa does a lot for our Music on Main. Casey go out there and water the flowers for us that make the town look so beautiful. And I just regret that she was publicly embarrassed by some comments made on Facebook. That's all I have.
Thank you, Michelle. I don't have much to add either. The fire department and Fiddlers Convention was a huge success. A lot of people out there, and that's always a good thing. I'd like to thank the people for coming out and supporting the county. That's what makes it all come together and all work. That's all I have. Heather, you have anything? Anybody else? If not, entertain a motion.
Move.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor? 5-0.